First ever podium in Formula 1. Third podium in Formula 1.
But never give up. That's what I learned today.
Daniil Kvyat's rise to Formula 1 was fast, but his fall was even faster. From a promising young talent in Red Bull's driver program to losing everything, his seat, his confidence, and even his personal life. His story is one of the most brutal in modern F1. Demoted mid-season, overshadowed by Max Verstappen, and ultimately cast aside, Kvyat's journey is a cautionary tale of how quickly fortunes can change in the world of motorsport. Here's how it all unfolded. Daniil Kvyat's journey to Formula 1 was anything but ordinary. Born in Ufa, Russia in 1994, his path to motorsport's pinnacle began at the age of 8 when he first stepped into a go-kart. His family soon relocated to Italy where he could compete at a higher level, and he quickly rose through the ranks. His performances in karting turned heads, but it was his dominance in junior single-seaters that really put him on the radar of major racing teams. By the time he entered Formula BMW in 2010, he was already a name to watch, picking up podiums and victories while splitting his time with Formula Renault, where he continued his winning ways. It wasn't long before Red Bull took notice. Their young driver program, designed to identify and nurture future champions, saw potential in Kvyat and signed him up alongside another young talent, Carlos Sainz. While both showed promise, Kvyat's aggressive style and rapid development set him apart. In 2013, he entered the highly competitive GP3 series, where he crushed the competition. Winning the title in his debut season, his meteoric rise made it impossible for Red Bull to ignore him any longer. When Mark Webber retired at the end of 2013, a chain reaction was set off. Daniel Ricciardo moved up to Red Bull, leaving a vacant seat at Toro Rosso. Against expectations, Red Bull took a gamble and promoted Kvyat to Formula 1. At just 19 years old, Kvyat was thrown into the deep end, becoming one of the youngest drivers to ever start an F1 race. He debuted in 2014 for Toro Rosso, and right from the first race in Australia, he showed why Red Bull had placed their faith in him. Finishing 9th, he became the youngest driver to score points in F1 history, breaking a record previously held by Sebastian Vettel. His rookie season was solid. While he wasn't setting the world on fire, he was consistently competitive, often outperforming his more experienced teammate, Jean-Éric Vergne. Kvyat's potential was clear, and with Red Bull keeping a close eye on their junior team, it wasn't long before his next big opportunity arrived. The Red Bull gamble. When Sebastian Vettel unexpectedly announced his departure from Red Bull at the end of the 2014 season, the team was left scrambling for a replacement. Many expected them to opt for a more experienced driver, but in a move that shocked the paddock, Red Bull decided to promote Kvyat to the senior team alongside Daniel Ricciardo. It was an enormous leap. He had only 1 year of F1 experience under his belt, and now he was expected to fill the shoes of a 4-time world champion. The pressure was immense, but Red Bull believed in his raw speed and talent. The 2015 season, however, proved to be a tough challenge. Red Bull's car was nowhere near as competitive as it had been during its dominant run from 2010 to 2013. The Renault engine was unreliable and underpowered, leaving Kvyat and Ricciardo fighting in the midfield rather than at the front. Despite these struggles, Kvyat showed flashes of brilliance. He finished 4th in Monaco, marking his best result yet, and in Hungary, he delivered a stunning drive to secure his first ever podium in Formula 1. At just 21 years old, he became the second youngest driver in history to stand on an F1 podium, behind only Vettel. Kvyat's performance over the season was respectable, and in a surprise twist, he actually outscored Ricciardo in the championship, finishing 7th to his teammate's 8th. Given the circumstances, it seemed like Red Bull's gamble had paid off, but while Kvyat had proven himself to be a capable driver, Red Bull's management wasn't entirely convinced. Behind the scenes, a new star was rising, one who would soon change Kvyat's career forever: the torpedo strikes. The 2016 season started with promise, but it quickly turned into a nightmare for Kvyat. The first major warning sign came in China. At the start of the race, Kvyat made an aggressive move, squeezing his car between the two Ferraris of Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Räikkönen. Vettel was forced wide, causing a collision with his teammate, and after the race he was furious. In the now infamous cooldown on-room exchange, Vettel confronted Kvyat, calling him a torpedo for his reckless driving. The nickname stuck, and while Kvyat dismissed it at the time, the tension between him and Red Bull was growing. The situation reached a boiling point in Russia, Kvyat's home race. Once again, he got tangled up with Vettel at the start, but this time the consequences were far worse.
But worse, and there's a spin! There's a spinning Ferrari of Sebastian Vettel, and he is out!
A misjudged braking maneuver saw him hit the back of Vettel's car not once but twice in the opening corners, sending the Ferrari into the barriers. Red Bull team boss Christian Horner and advisor Helmut Marko had seen enough. Just days later, they made a brutal decision. Kvyat was being demoted back to Toro Rosso with immediate effect. In his place, Red Bull promoted a 17-year-old Max Verstappen, who had only been in F1 for a little over a year. The move was unprecedented. No driver in Red Bull's history had ever been sent back to the junior team mid-season. For Kvyat, it was a devastating blow. He had gone from being one of F1's rising stars to an afterthought in a matter of weeks. And to make matters worse, Verstappen immediately justified Red Bull's decision by winning his very first race with the team in Spain.
Wins the Spanish Grand Prix and is the youngest driver ever.
Kvyat's demotion crushed his confidence. Once known for his aggressive, fearless driving, he now seemed hesitant and error-prone. His results suffered, and while he had a few solid performances at Toro Rosso, he was no longer seen as a future Red Bull driver. By the end of 2017, he was dropped entirely from the program, replaced by Pierre Gasly. For the first time since he had joined the Red Bull family, Kvyat was left without a seat in Formula One. With no other teams interested in signing him, he took on a role as Ferrari's reserve driver, spending 2018 in the simulator, helping the team develop their car. It seemed like his F1 career was over, but in a shocking turn of events, Red Bull came calling once again. Toro Rosso needed an experienced driver for 2019, and with few other options, they brought Kvyat back. Amazingly, Kvyat made the most of his second chance. In one of the most dramatic races of the decade, the chaotic 2019 German Grand Prix, he drove brilliantly through the carnage to finish third, securing his second career podium. The achievement was made even sweeter by the fact that it came just a day after the birth of his daughter. It was a moment of redemption, but it wouldn't last long. The final blow? Daniil Kvyat's 2019 podium at the German Grand Prix should have been the turning point in his career. It was a stunning comeback, proving that despite everything Red Bull had put him through, he still had the talent to compete at the highest level. But no matter how well he performed, Red Bull had already made up their minds. Kvyat was never going to return to the main team. Instead, they promoted Alex Albon to Red Bull later that season, once again rejecting Kvyat for a chance at redemption. It was the second time they had overlooked him in favor of a younger driver. For Kvyat, this was a clear message. No matter what he did, he wasn't part of Red Bull's future.
Daniil Kvyat went onto the right tyre.
Despite outperforming expectations at Toro Rosso, he was being kept as a placeholder, nothing more. His 2020 season was another struggle. While he had moments of brilliance, like a fourth-place finish at Imola, his performances weren't enough to convince Red Bull to keep him around. Pierre Gasly, who had been demoted from Red Bull himself, was delivering much stronger results, even winning a race in Monza. At the end of 2020, Kvyat was dropped from AlphaTauri and replaced by Yuki Tsunoda. With no offers from any other F1 teams, his career in the sport was effectively over. Just 6 years after his rapid rise to Red Bull, he was completely out of Formula One. The once promising young driver had been cast aside, left searching for a new path in motorsport. But while his F1 career had reached its lowest point, his personal life was about to take an even more dramatic turn. The personal shock. If losing his seat in Formula One wasn't bad enough, what happened next was even worse. In late 2019 or early 2020, Kvyat and his longtime girlfriend Kelly Piquet ended their relationship. At first, it seemed like a private matter, nothing out of the ordinary for a high-profile F1 driver. But soon after, rumors began to circulate that Piquet had started dating someone new, none other than Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen. The irony was impossible to ignore. Verstappen had already taken Kvyat's Red Bull seat back in 2016, marking the beginning of his downfall in Formula One. Now, he had also entered a relationship with Kvyat's ex-girlfriend, who was also the mother of his child. It was a surreal situation, almost too dramatic to be real. Kvyat had lost everything: his career, his confidence, and now even his personal life had been intertwined with the very person who had replaced him in F1. The final blow came in December 2023 when Verstappen and Piquet announced that they were expecting a baby together. For Kvyat, this must have felt like the ultimate twist of fate. While Verstappen was cementing his legacy as one of the greatest F1 drivers of all time, winning multiple world championships, Kvyat was struggling to find relevance in other forms of racing. It was a cruel reminder of how drastically their careers had diverged. Kvyat's story had gone from a tale of a promising young talent to a cautionary tale of how quickly fortunes can change in the world of Formula One. His life had been completely reshaped by Red Bull's brutal driver program, and in a way, Verstappen had taken not just his career, but also his personal happiness. The harsh reality of F1. Formula One is a sport of fine margins. A single mistake, a single bad season, or even just being in the wrong place at the wrong time can determine a driver's entire career. Daniil Kvyat's story is a prime example of how ruthless F1 can be. His rise through the ranks was rapid, his talent undeniable. But the politics of Red Bull's driver program and the emergence of a generational talent in Max Verstappen meant his career was never truly in his own hands. Kvyat wasn't a bad driver. In fact, his results in 2015 proved he had the skill to go toe-to-toe with Daniel Ricciardo, one of the best drivers on the grid at the time. But Red Bull operates differently from most teams. They are notorious for their cutthroat approach to driver management, making decisions that may seem harsh but often lead to long-term success. Verstappen was their golden boy, the future of the team, and they were willing to do whatever it took to fast-track his progress. Unfortunately for Kvyat, that meant he had to be sacrificed. The mental toll of his demotion was clear. After being dropped from Red Bull, he struggled to find consistency and his confidence never truly recovered.
Limits on the track, and will be giving my answers there.
While he managed to make a comeback with Toro Rosso and even secured another podium in 2019, he was never again considered a serious contender for a top seat. Red Bull had already moved on, and so had the rest of the paddock. By the time Kvyat was let go at the end of 2020, his F1 career had already been hanging by a thread. The arrival of Yuki Tsunoda at AlphaTauri was the final nail in the coffin. Unlike some other Red Bull alumni, such as Pierre Gasly and Carlos Sainz, who managed to escape the team's ruthless system and rebuild their careers elsewhere, Kvyat never found another opportunity. He lingered as a reserve driver for Alpine in 2021, hoping for a way back, but it never came. His post-F1 career has seen him dabble in various forms of motorsport, including endurance racing and NASCAR, but without much success. Unlike Verstappen, who went on to dominate F1, Kvyat faded into obscurity, another casualty of Red Bull's relentless pursuit of victory. The final twist, life off the track. If losing his Red Bull seat was painful, what happened next in Kvyat's personal life must have been downright unbearable. In late 2019 or early 2020, he and his longtime girlfriend Kelly Piquet ended their relationship. Breakups happen, especially in the high-pressure world of F1. But what made this one different was what came next. Not long after their split, Kelly Piquet started dating none other than Max Verstappen, the very man who had taken Kvyat's seat at Red Bull. The irony was brutal. Verstappen hadn't just taken his job, now he was in a relationship with the mother of Kvyat's child. And as if that wasn't enough, in December 2023, Verstappen and Piquet announced that they were expecting a baby together. It was the ultimate twist in a story that already felt like something out of a Hollywood drama. Verstappen had taken everything: Kvyat's career, his reputation, and now even his family. Of course, there's no indication that Verstappen had anything personal against Kvyat, but from the outside, it certainly looked as if the Dutchman had completely replaced him, both on and off the track. For Kvyat, watching Verstappen's meteoric rise must have been a tough pill to swallow. While he struggled to stay relevant in the world of motorsport, Verstappen became a global superstar, winning multiple world championships and cementing himself as one of the greatest drivers of all time. The legacy of the torpedo. So what is Daniil Kvyat's legacy in Formula One? He was talented, there's no doubt about that. He was quick, aggressive, and at times brilliant. But he also made mistakes at crucial moments, and when Red Bull lost faith in him, there was no way back. Unlike drivers like Sainz or Gasly, who managed to reinvent themselves, Kvyat never found a second chance. His story serves as a harsh reminder of how unforgiving F1 can be. In a different era with a different team, things might have turned out differently. Had Red Bull not been so eager to promote Verstappen, Kvyat might have had the time to develop into a more complete driver. Instead, he became a cautionary tale, a driver who showed flashes of brilliance but was ultimately cast aside in favor of someone deemed more promising. And yet, despite everything, there's something almost admirable about Kvyat's resilience. Many drivers would have walked away from the sport entirely after what he went through, but he kept pushing, kept trying to prove himself. Even though his career didn't go the way he had hoped, he still made history. He was the first Russian to stand on an F1 podium, and his comeback drive in Germany 2019 remains one of the great underdog moments of the modern era. But perhaps the most telling part of his story is how he will be remembered. Not as a champion, not as a driver who defied the odds, but as the man who lost everything. His seat, his confidence, and ultimately even his personal life. In the cutthroat world of Formula One, sometimes being good just isn't enough.